Frieren is a show like no other. With the premise, it reels you in with the promise of a grand and emotional journey of Frieren discovering her emotions and what it means to connect with people. It draws your attention with the flashy battles and animation that can either last moments or be drawn out to full-on epics with tensions between every attack. There isn't much wrong that Frieren has done when it comes to telling the story that it wants to tell, and I think there's a secret behind this. I would call Frieren a fantasy masterclass, but it is so much more than that. It doesn't only appeal to fantasy fans who like vivid imaginary worlds. People who like well-written characters with very deep interpersonal relationships will revel in the glory of Frieren's characterization. Those who like the fighting are brought in through the glimmering lights within the skirmishes. It's something you can focus on and enjoy, but there's more to this story than the sparkle of the animation. Frieren is an arduous adventure of empathy, pressured relationships and fights, character development that grows into meaningful results and changes, and finally, a story about a girl who got lost in the passage of time and intends to live out her life in remembrance of those echoes that once were. This is going to contain spoilers for the Frieren anime, but without further stalling, let's get into the reasons why Frieren will be an unforgettable classic. When I started to hear the hype around Frieren back in September, I was excited because I'm the type of person to believe everything on the internet. If you tell me Joe Biden was the one behind the plandemic, I would say I'd believe you, but realistically, I might just block you on all socials. However, Frieren had a reputation for being a story that outclassed all other fantasies coming out at the time, and watching the trailer that released, I believed it easily because the aura that it gave off was a gentle one. It gave me comfy vibes, and that's ultimately what most of the anime is, with a bit of boom. Whoosh. That's what attracts a lot of people. The action scenes show the masterful ability of the animators to bring out the big guns when they need it. With explosive power, the fights come onto the scene with beautiful flair that gives shows like Mob Psycho a run for their money. And that show is all about a guy who has infinite storages of power. If he were a loaded machine gun, I could give someone the 1-2 mowdown classic indefinitely. These conflicts are definitely a gem when it comes to their value, both in production and importance to the story. But I think if we were to lay out the important factors of what makes Frieren onto a chart, it would look something like this. The characterization and world building of the story are the concrete foundation of the project. On the next level, you have the development that these characters and the world itself goes through. At the top of the tower is storytelling that is able to shine through, with the cherry on top that is the production and action of the series. I don't want to talk in every direction like I'm being stretched between 4 different people in a cartoon, so I'll try to condense this into a 3-part exposition showcasing why Frieren is a masterclass among its peers. We'll start from the opposite of the foundation, with that being the storytelling accompanied by the production and action, and how it is the perfect topping of sprinkled crack on this strawberry sundae of a story. Frieren tackles a story of fantasy and what you would call a massive trope from a different angle. Instead of being bodied by a linebacker when an isekai or fantasy talks about the demon lord and how this party of heroes needs to take them down, Frieren feels like a gentle push while riding on a bicycle. It's guiding you on this journey of rediscovery instead of throwing you in the pitbull pen of tropes, scenarios, and typical storytelling. The story puts you in the aftermath of it all. The tiring battle has been won, the opposition against the human race has been silenced, and the demons are nowhere to be seen. The quiet environment as the heroes calmly return in a cart of a merchant speaks well to the characters of the party. They get welcomed back to the capital with tons of praise and gifts. A festival is held that night, and the party of heroes are sitting to the side of the festivities. They enjoyed their time traveling together, and that night was the accumulation of all their efforts. Fast forward about 50 years, and you stand where the flame of this adventure starts to spark its first embers. Frieren is an elf who has outlived and is going to outlive many of the people she has met, including her old adventuring party. Many of them have known that their time of rambunctious, threatening battles is over. They can only do so much in their age, but they keep on living, cherishing the connections that they do have. Frieren sees this, but doesn't understand. It isn't until the hero Himmel passes away one night, and his funeral is held the day after, that Frieren understands what relationships are meant to be, or at least that they should mean more than what she thought of them as. She didn't ridicule people like some others, but she was disinterested in the people she adventured with and met. The loss suddenly hit her with this realization, and she broke into tears trying to come to terms with the fact that Himmel is dead. This isn't a cry me a river type of shit. Losing someone is seriously damaging to all my 12-year-old apathetic viewers out there. This is what makes Frieren go on to her next journey, one of understanding, trust, and empathy. This setup for an anime, one which you thought was going to tell a generic fantasy story about defeating some great evil, just to end up as a sob story about some girl who lost her boyfriend, is fucking amazing. I was surprised, but was welcoming to the news. It's like when you're expecting to have a horrific experience at Taco Bell again, but you get served some delicious ass food without suffering the consequence of being planted on the shitter for an hour. This all happened in less than an episode. To get this done so succinctly, with such completeness that isn't confusing at all, is great pacing, and it bodes well for the rest of the factors in the show. When we talk about the development of the characters and relationships of this show later on in this video, you'll see the opportunity that is provided for these characters to grow is from the amazing back and forth of Frieren's past and her current present. Frieren goes on an adventure to reconnect with all the people and locations she once rested or fought at. She interacts with middle-aged men who are now old grandpas, children who are now elders in their village, and meeting new people who took the place of others she knew in the past. She wants to get to know all of them, along with the new companions she makes on this trip. It's something that makes you reflect on your own life and the crowd and scenery surrounding you, but don't reflect too hard, because I don't want you to burst a blood vessel and there's some badassery to be had between all these moments. Sometimes, the places that Frieren visits aren't always met with only happy memories and friendly new people. There are tasks she must get done and enemies she must fight. There is an uprising of evil since the Demon Lord has been gone, and it's not the levels of pouting that Frieren has mustered up in her years of living. Demons are left in remnants across the continent, and she comes across many of these pieces that she has to put back in their place. It's what leads to some of the action and some of the difficulties that come with their overarching journey. The action in this anime is second to nothing. I've seen so many anime that have grandiose, great battles between opposing sides. Take Attack on Titan, for example. It's a political battle worse than the one in the United States, which I know, hard to fucking imagine, but stick with me for a second. These differing sides fight with their ideals on their sleeve and their dreams carried on their backs. The full-out brawls that would span out to reach every corner of the city were merciless, and it is considered to be one of the greatest anime to live up to its expectations. Frieren is different from this because the storytelling is the base for all conflicts. It weaves together a mere scuffle, or even an extravagant clash, and the context dictates how long-winded or intense a battle may be. Sometimes these fights can last less than half an episode, play out for its full length, or become its own singular arc. It makes sense why some of them may be so flashy that they burn out in mere minutes, but why others are a constant raging furnace of strikes that won't give up until one side is caught off balance. It feels interconnected, like a dystopian world with the leading figure who watches over all, only this time the ending won't result in being stuffed in a rubber room with rats. There isn't a detail that's forgotten when getting into these altercations, and the production is able to back up the force with which some of these characters speak their words and throw their punches, and the authentic coldness or tiredness from which these comments and impacts stem from. There's one fight in particular that I want to talk about, and it is a triple battle of Fern, Stark, and Frieren against the demons trying to take over Graf Granite City. Frieren is on her journey with her companions, trying to make their way north as much as they can. This is when they find the town that they're in to be fraught with danger because demons are making a stealthy takeover of the location from the inside. I won't get too deep into describing the details because if you're watching this video, you probably know it all. Blah blah blah. Frieren is sent to the gulag for trying to challenge a demon, blah blah blah. Fern and Stark trying to figure out what's going on like they're Holmes and Watson if Watson was a puny bitch instead of a stylish sidekick. You know the story. They end up fighting in the dead of the night while Frieren runs away to be a treasure hunting, money grubbing goblin. We all know what happens. It's the memories that pop up in these sequences that show how the storytelling intertwines with the fast-paced action to bring you into the characters' minds and develop them in a meaningful way. But we'll get to that development in a little bit. Let's start with the Frieren and Aura conflict. Other than birthing the best line of anime we saw in 2023.
Kill yourself.
This was not the final showdown you'd expect from a rivalry like this. Frieren is easily able to take down the living armies possessed by Aura, but that was not the kind of tactic that Aura thought she would win with. This all came down to a competition of who's packing more. They would measure their mana against each other, and whoever had more would gain control over the other person. This is one that ultimately favors demons in most situations because they are a long-lived race who study magic their entire lives. They're kinda like geeks if they lived in our worlds. Their status would depend on how many bachelor's, masters, and PhDs they have. I won't say that's entirely wrong in our world, but that's depressing to think about, so let's move on. This is when the flashbacks start to fade in and out of the circumstances Frieren finds herself in. We find out about her past and how she was trained to take down evil in this brutal world. She has the power to become one of the greatest mages possible. All mages hate her for this one simple trick. Just live forever, right? Frieren spent her entire life hiding and nurturing her mana, so when it came time to swing the executioner's axe, she was the one who got the final laugh. But she didn't laugh. She is cold as ice, put her in a COD lobby, and I promise you she is leaving the others in there cooked, roasted, pressurized, stewed, and burnt. There was a memory in the middle of it all that showed its head. Back during their 10-year journey, Frieren fought these living armors with a party of heroes. Himmel talks to Frieren saying that these used to be people. They've been taken over, armor and everything, and there's still a soul in that armor. It would be disrespectful to destroy them mercilessly like you were some sort of New York rat trying to steal your burger. Frieren respects Himmel's wish and decides that in the future she would use gentle magic that would dispel the control instead of eradicating the armor. It shows in the fight against Aura, and when Aura commented on that fact, it cemented Frieren's distaste for demons even more. This is what stuck out to me during this fight, and there's more to analyze from Fern and Stark's fights. Starting with Fern, you can see how much she's grown as a mage, and considering this is something she's poured her heart, soul, and life into, it is significant that she is able to match the prowess of a demon who has lived for hundreds of years. When you sink your life's work into a passion, anyone would want to see the fruits of their labor. For Himmel, it was the kindness that he grew to the point of being the iconic hero. For Flamme, it was the magic that she studied to master and bring up to the rest of the world as humanity's founder. For Fern, this special thing is her ability as a mage. There's nothing she's been doing other than this. Her ability to overpower the demon and outsmart him shows that she learned well from Frieren's teachings. Frieren taught her in the same way Flammel taught Frieren, so it depicts this nurturing kindness and guidance as something that was passed down. The connections that you make with other people last a lifetime. Whether it's your active consciousness or subconscious, you can actively pick up on lessons or be scarred from PTSD that causes you to react in certain ways. Storytelling in Frieren is not only limited to character development or world building, but a perspective on human nature as well. Stark is someone else who looks at his past and he doesn't view it only as a memory, but as a lesson. Fighting Linny, he recognizes that she is fighting him with the same style Aizen uses. It is something she saw and has imitated with her magic. There's very little Stark can do because he doesn't believe that he can best his master in a duel. When almost everything has been tried or attempted, he starts to remember his times training with Aizen. They were spent tiring away with grueling exercises and practice, but between all the fired up work, there were messages and lessons Aizen left with Stark. There were things that Stark would remember as a warrior in training and soon to be full-fledged. Warriors should never give up in battle. Funny how this is the great wisdom, seeing as how it's something any JRPG would have told their protag going off to kill yet another god. But Frieren's production is something else when producing this effect in the whole other way. The pauses between Stark getting beaten down and him getting up. The angles at which it displays him battered and bruised to the point of losing consciousness. The music and everything else, that extra bit of emotions that tells Stark took this message and has never forgotten it. He was always going to keep getting back up in every universe and timeline. It was not a matter of if, it was only a matter of when he would be tested. The battle ensues and Stark isn't only remembering his past but coming to his own conclusions. When training, he remembers the power that Aizen's strikes had behind them. It's something that he'll never forget because of how long he had been taking them. Along with the tears and blood, he uses the impacts he took to face Linny in battle. Running in a straightforward line, he bet it all on his insight, and with it being true, he was able to put Linny's attacks to a halt. He finished the fight, and through memories and connections he made in the past, whether through consequence or fortune, he was able to survive another day and save more people. It was the storytelling that shined through in the end for me, telling storylines from the past that means nothing to the present, but they couldn't have captured so many people's hearts with these encounters if they didn't have the production to back it up. I won't nerd out about Madhouse because personally, I'm not a nerd, but they put their heart into everything they do. Whatever project they may be working on, they use their creative freedom to mesmerize the audience with flashy, but not over-the-top intense scenes. It really doesn't number the people who have epilepsy though, because the blinking and strobing lights in the scene must cause some to practically faint halfway down their chair, spasming because of the quality of the animation. For real though, my condolences go out to those who experienced this. To say one last thing about the production, Madhouse doesn't only tunnel focus on one aspect of the project, but every part. The score that is currently playing, the visual being shown on the screen, and the moral at the end of the plot line. Whatever part you can think of, Madhouse have planned out how they're going to portray that and enhance it with all of its other complementary factors. They work parallel to each other and strike chords within the audience to get them to love the work at hand. It's through all of the production, action, and storytelling that the anime is able to develop each of the characters meaningfully. Development isn't always an effect of the fights that they get into. They get into fights because of development they've gone through that led them to believe more strongly in certain morals and standpoints. For Frieren, this was because of Flamme's teachings about demons and her masterful demonstrations and practices of being a great mage. For Fern, this was through living with Frieren and traveling with her through all kinds of conditions. She knows how their dynamic works and from her has picked up on many things that she herself should be doing to replicate her ability and push their agenda forward. For Stark, it was the attributes of a warrior that he gained through his mentorship with Aizen. His braveness shined through when he needed to defend people from danger, and despite being the way he is, he still lives up to these values. I'll get into some of the specifics in the story where this is shown, so let's get into the development in Frieren. One thing that Frieren knows how to do is to make meaningful development. There's wisdom from the past and lessons from the present that tell our characters what they need to do in order to progress their objectives or lives in the directions they want to go. They follow these signals and with their gut and intuition, decide what is the best path to go on from where they stand. They don't make important choices compulsively and think rationally for the most part. Frieren is a grandmother who's a bit over the edge of insanity, so some of her choices with money are worrying to say the least. I think the part that stands out the most to me is when the characters develop according to their choices and decisions that mold them to be greater than they were before. It's very apparent and clear-cut what these decisions and developments are, but you might have a bit of trouble if you're legally blind, or in other words, a shonen blockhead with no brains. There's many changes the people of the world go through, and I'll showcase some examples with varying degrees of importance. One instance from the earlier adventures of the squad is when Frieren and Fern spent quite a while looking for some flowers so that they could plant them around the statue of Himmel. There were two lessons that the characters learned from this period of time, one for Frieren and the other for Fern. Frieren understands that she can't play with human life like she has before. The lifespan of a person is extremely underwhelming compared to an elf. I mean to the point of buying bootleg anime merchandise at full price. That's some Wish.com type shit. Fern figures out more about Frieren and how she operates, but more importantly, what it is she is chasing when it comes to her goals after she paid off her debt to hide her. It's strange to think about this because nearly everyone goes through some form of this because they are unprepared for future consequences. It's like finishing the anime like Cyberpunk Edge Runners, seeing the end credits roll, and thinking to yourself, damn, what the fuck did I just watch? And how will I ever emotionally recover? The dilemma that Fern finds herself in is that she completed the goal of finding a way to support herself after hide her past. She became a mage and is able to survive with Frieren fully by themselves. She's doubting whether this path that she chose was the right one all along, and can she be any more real than this? It's like majoring in engineering and becoming depressed because your hatred for the field grows over the years, but you're already 3.5 years in it, and it's kind of fucked. I totally didn't pull this example from anywhere in particular, it's just typical college things. If you know, you know sort of thing. Fern makes the statement that it never had to be magic that she chose, but through some direction from Frieren and experience of living their lives in that village, she realizes the beauty of magic and the world overall. She comes to appreciate the adventures she has with Frieren and almost became sort of a mother to her in a way. It's weird to say this, but we all know Fern, despite her pouty nature, cares much for Frieren. I wouldn't do this type of shit for a homie who I didn't care for at all. It also goes the opposite way as well. While adventuring later down the line with Stark and the party now, they come across a shelter where they need to rest because Frieren has caught a fever. While waiting for her sickness to go down, they live out their days as if a small, humble family working on the farm lady's land and providing comfort to Frieren. Frieren cares much about Frieren, which goes to show her progression when it comes to understanding human connection better and what it means to nurture a relationship. From her past, Frieren remembers when she was sick and Himmel had to take care of her as well. Holding her hand was something he did because it felt nice to have the touch of a human in a time of vulnerability. I think I can say that for all of us. Some hugs are in order for our self-esteem and well-being. There's that crazy study that says you need 4 hugs a day for survival, 8 hugs a day for maintenance, and 12 hugs a day for growth. Let me just tell you, the majority of us on this video right now ain't even surviving. We out here as husks hobbling by on our last legs. I feel like if I didn't work out consistently, my body would just shrivel up and I'd become a part of the sediment that lines the riverbanks. Frieren does the same for Frieren in her time of need, and just like that, we see the reliance they have on each other as a party of companions, but more importantly, a group of friends, or in my interpretation, a strong family. They have lived with each other for the majority of Frieren's life, and this creates special bonds, one that Frieren has felt before, but never quite comprehended. It just goes to show that there's an overarching message about forming meaningful human connections in Frieren. I'll mention it a ton in my upcoming points because the theme of Frieren is one we should always strive for. The last point I want to make about Frieren having meaningful development is something that you may have found around fan Twitter threads, but it regards the relationship of Frieren and Stark. When they meet for the first time, Frieren is appalled by Stark because of his cowardice nature, but over time, Stark is able to show again and again that he may not be able to talk the talk, but he can definitely walk the walk. During one of the episodes, Stark is chosen to represent some noble's dead son in the party they are going to have. The little details don't matter, but what does is the fact that Frieren is attending the dance with him as his partner. Through weeks of learning proper etiquette, courtesy fit for nobles, and miscellaneous gestures, they experience hardships because of how they were raised. Frieren being an orphan from a war, I doubt she knew little of what it was like to live lavishly, less now because of all the bullshit Frieren buys with their money. Stark grew up in a village of warriors who trained hard every day and gained status by accumulating strength. There was little time for comfort except when it meant to recuperate energy. Their upbringings with Hyder and Eisen respectively were far off as well, with both of them living good lives but not extravagant ones. This event helped them bond through the difficulties that they faced on their own but together in nature. When it was time to show off their dance moves, Stark and Frieren lived up to the expectations of their instructors. They danced their heart out to appease the uneasy audience of the nobility and provided an excellent performance for everyone there. It was beautiful to see, but that isn't the only beauty of the whole situation. After this matter, through other episodes, you can see how the gestures between Stark and Frieren change. They're more polite to each other. They seem to enjoy each other's company more. I'm not saying they hated each other's guts, and if they were in an Overwatch lobby, they would tell each other to jump off a bridge.
Hey Jesse,
Preparing to engage.
kill yourself. Hang yourself in front of your family.
What I'm saying is that through small changes in their demeanor and simple actions, they looked like they were enjoying talking to each other and whatever other activities they would engage in during their journeys. It's a small detail you don't see unless you look past the foreground, but it is a concrete one that is definitely there. If I knew I was going to get that level of intricate character development, I would have rented out a movie theater and gotten them to put this up on the big screen. I don't have those kinds of bands, but it's a sentiment I wholeheartedly agree with. Frieren keeps on showing and showing that it not only matters to form those connections with people you'll call lifelong friends or partners, but to nurse them up from infancy to developed and foolproof bonds of trust. Frieren only surprises me more and more every episode, how it can one-up itself in terms of its storytelling, imagery, development, production, and whatever else you can think of. But I think these stem from two very well-built foundations that the story stands on. The character building and world design are out of this world when we talk about Frieren, and I'll show exactly why it is this way. The one thing that I think anime likes to fall back on too much are character tropes and cliches. These two things tend to be the standard for at least some of the cast when it comes to some popular shonen, romances, comedies, slice of life, and other demographics and genres of anime and manga. It's something you get used to after a while of watching a bunch of the available catalog because it's the standard. I'd rather shows not have this because there are already enough creeps in real life. We don't need the pervert archetype to intrude in the fiction that sullies the joy I get from media. When you watch Frieren, you see the growth that characters go through as an effect of development stemming from different case scenarios. From when we got to know them, to their future endeavors in this journey, to the past that influences the present, every bit of their life has repercussions towards who they are as a person. The effects of these events are clear in the characters' actions, and the cause of it is revealed to us not too soon before or after they take matters into their own hands. Something that the story of Frieren really tries to build on is Frieren's understanding of human connection. I think it's a theme that the show brings back every other episode or so. There's many points in the show where Frieren shows appreciation for her past experiences and uses his insight she's gained to better her relationship she has in the moment. To start off with, we have some early examples of this new sense of hers. Something as small as getting Fern a birthday present shows how great Frieren has grown since Himo's passing. It's a small sentiment that means a lot, even more considering how Frieren perceives time. With the passage of time being infinite, it feels like Frieren wouldn't pay attention to what day, month, or year it is. Frieren still sees Fern as she is now as a child. By raising her through much of her adolescence, Frieren has adopted a parental-like nature towards Fern. This new understanding of what it means to build relations makes it possible for Frieren to cherish what time people have. It's even shown in the second episode when they're looking for the blue flowers Himo liked so much. They took months and months of time to search for these flora, living in a small village and participating in everyday life. For Frieren, this must have felt equivalent to a trucker making a delivery and stopping at a rest stop for a late night snack and some sleep. That short reprieve felt like moments for Frieren, but a lifetime for Fern. Despite that, I'm sure it's safe to say that through that predicament, Frieren learned more about how to balance priorities between her selfish desires and what other people want. Frieren uses her memories to act as the person she wishes to be now. She wants to help, live, and breathe with the people she knows currently. Even if she can't be the motherly, grown woman archetype to every person she meets, she still finds a way to integrate herself into their lives in a meaningful way. Frieren and Sign have a bond that seems closest to that of a longtime friends. Both are at an age in their respectable race demographic where they see others like Fern and Stark as children. They've lived a good while and they know how to handle situations in a responsible way. They treat each other more equally than the others in the story because despite their coldness that can sometimes freeze over a situation, they understand each other. Frieren comforts Sign during the moments after they meet when he's still unsure of what to do. She inspires him to chase his friend along with their dreams. Sign doesn't provide the same type of support to Frieren, but gives her a hand in dealing with Fern and Stark. The dynamic they've formed with each other is a dysfunctional family at best, with Stark's dense senses when it comes to talking to girls and Fern's easily agitated personality. It's tough to keep up this house of cards with Frieren's bluntness and the only sane person being Sign. Nonetheless, it still works just like in real life. They get along fine, and even after Sign leaves, they can still function as a party because of the strong bonds they formed, forged with trust and care. Reminds me of my family, just without all the good parts of the deal. One dynamic that I'm particularly interested in that touches on the whole theme of Frieren as a story is the relationship between Frieren and Ciri. We all know Ciri is an all-powerful, commanding being who knows what she is talking about, and through her experiences, like Frieren says, has trained her intuition to make the best decisions anyone could ever make with the wisdom that she possesses. It is no question if she is the most powerful character we have seen in the show. Her authority and reputation are just that renowned in the nation. The reach she has would be similar to Mr. Beast, and you can only imagine if Mr. Beast took on YouTuber apprentices when he's already got so many people glazing his shit. Whom Ciri seeks to take on as a class 1 mage depends on many things. The tests are meant to eliminate many of the participants because the amount of people passing these proctored exams can't be too plentiful. Only the most elite should be allowed to boast the title of class 1 mage in the kingdom, and this is all according to Ciri's intuition. This is what she believes is right, and it has worked well so far as long as she's been in charge of of this institution. There's a moment in one of the final episodes where Ciri sees Frieren approach her during the final test, an interview with Ciri herself. There isn't anything that surprises her until Frieren can see the genuine amount of power that Ciri has and is hiding. At that moment, Ciri realizes that she wants to take Frieren on as a student because of her infinite potential. I think this is where we get to see the buildup of what we've been developing throughout the entire show, the multiple years that Frieren and Frieren has been traveling together and what they've been nurturing on this journey. Frieren doesn't drop everything just so she can progress her magic as efficiently as possible. Frieren and Frieren have been together for most of Frieren's life. Frieren has grown attached to Frieren as much as Frieren has grown fond of having Frieren around. Just as Frieren might feel like a proud mother to Frieren, Frieren has found solace in being Frieren's apprentice and even more importantly, a friend with something to prove. She wants to prove that she'll be there for Frieren when she needs her most, like how Frieren was there to raise her up in her time of necessity. It's really wholesome and you can see this clearly after you look past the fact that Frieren lives the lifestyle of a NEET. These relationships are formed at the beginning of the anime and throughout and while the story progresses. Each trial that the team undergoes results in the stronger bindings of trust and reliability. The effect doesn't wear off like some shitty caffeine crash in the middle of your workday. It's consistent and I think that's also what allows the world alike to sparkle with the polish that it has. I like when fantasy worlds have an array of different factions, syndicates, nations, whatever you want to call them, right? On the larger scale in Frieren, you have humanity versus demons. From the get-go, we learn that demons are anything except benevolent and loving. They feast on children and adults alike to grow their power and strengthen themselves. It's a fucking miracle that humans have survived so long because I feel like it'd be a no diff for the demons. Literally like they're diamonds and humans are coppers. This must have been the generational throw of all time. Demons are established as the great evil and that is the end of that conversation. Then you have the warring nations of humans. We're introduced to some of the people who are a part of these fronts, but they themselves don't seem to be good or bad. They're just people who have to get by in this dangerous world and sadly have to face other people in conflicts that they have no say over. Individuals themselves have motivations that you may call evil. Due to their background, however, we learn that it is the only thing they've known how to do. Everyone discovered a new fetish when Ubel got introduced, but in addition to this, I also learned about many of the people in the first class mage exam with unique backgrounds and situations. They all have reasons for trying to become first class mages, and you can't really call them good or evil, but somewhere in a gray area. Their intentions may look like some villain's evil doings, but others are more on the side of pure-hearted intentions of not completing some grand goal. Some of them only want access to the northern lands where they have unresolved problems that have been plaguing them their entire lives. One of them wants to sip tea and eat biscuits all day from his home, but he's still pulling bad bitches being a recluse. Imagine that, huh? The world and the characters build off of each other, and much like situations in our lives, always have a basis. The balance at which these aspects of the story change stay consistent. Aside from the one-off serial killing that Frieren encountered, which is entirely accurate considering we have Jeffrey Dahmer in our world, but that aside, these consistencies mixed up with the oddities the characters encounter along with their adventures mimics our lives 100%. I would say it's more extraordinary than that because it's an entirely different world and setting the author is building, leading to unique scenarios that we may have never heard of before, but that the writer themselves are able to use logic and foundations in the world to make them consistent like everything else. We love all these things about Frieren, and anything else I haven't mentioned adds on to that affection we have for this series. Something I find amazing is that the theming and message stays consistent. It's okay to have the message of the story evolve as the characters change, but Frieren dives into this intense and emotional motif of human connection because not only is there so much to explore within the connections between people, but it's something no one in humanity has ever figured out. While other ideas have been solved and are considered to be the correct opinion or choice, the intricacies of human connections will never be fully discovered because society changes and with that the people too. Unique figures are popping up everywhere, whether it be in politics, music, movies, or any other profession or medium. This will never change for as long as civilization continues expanding and evolving, and the same applies to Frieren's world. It is a breathing environment with believable people who have realistic motives. They change the world around them for better or worse, and these regions that change birth new people who will have their own impact on the world around them, whether it be on the whole kingdom or a small village helping farmers and artisans with their projects. This story truly puts into perspective what it means to have an impact on the world around you, how that affects your own self, and how you can use that wisdom to change and help the people around you. Thank you, Frieren, for being a once-in-a-lifetime story, but even more importantly, a lesson. And thank you to everyone who has made it this far into the video. I love experimenting with this new format of longer video essays, so if you're a fan of them, consider liking the video and subscribing so you can see my very infrequent but nonetheless future uploads. I have other socials if you want to chat or interact with me there, whether it be TikTok, Discord, Instagram, or Twitter. You can see me upload my introspective analysis on Twitter, or join the brigade on Discord on trying to get me to cosplay Mahiro from Onamai. I'll be uploading more on my second channel regarding gaming content, so follow that and my Twitch channel as well if you're interested in seeing more of my unfiltered personality. Other than that, thank you for supporting my content. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see all of you next time.